Hey guys, Casey popping in here just to give you guys a little bit of an update. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the next episode of Midnight Gravity out and ready on time. So instead of leaving the feed blank for this week, we are going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into our Patreon, all right? Every other week, we are going to be having an after show, kind of going over the last two episodes of the week. This is the first one that we did for episodes 1 and 2 of Midnight Gravity Season 2, all right? So, again, sorry for the inconvenience, but we hope you enjoy the sneak peek into our Patreon. And if you like what you listen to and want to hear more, please consider subscribing to our Patreon, guys. It's just patreon.com/rpjesters. All right, enjoy the show.
Playing here with you. I have to leave before I start to grow roots, but we can stretch this out. Loop drum tracks and token keys. My car's at the end, it's dark. Why don't you come walk with me?
Hello everyone and welcome to the Jesters Recap. This is our new after show where we're going to be talking about the last couple episodes. This is going to be kind of a bi-weekly podcast where we chat about what just happened in the Jesters Court and at this point in Seattle.
I was going to get you if you didn't emphasize the cap correctly, so good job.
Yes, I had to make sure that I was going to emphasize cap correctly.
It's important.
But yeah, thank you everybody for listening to this show. Obviously, this is a Patreon exclusive, so thank you so much for supporting the show.
Thank you so much.
Super appreciate it because we get to do things like this now that we have talked about wanting to do forever.
At least 3 years now?
Yes, basically since the beginning. We've wanted
episode
to
15, we were like, we're going to call the after show the tech check.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know why that came up. Like, why was that?
Because we had the technology skill and someone was like, yeah, roll a tech check. And we're like, oh, that sounds good.
That made way more sense for Power in the Dark, doesn't it?
Exactly. No, it's like, yeah, since we didn't start by the end of that campaign, it's a lost cause. But
yeah, I guess that's fair. So first and foremost, how did you guys feel about jumping back into Midnight Gravity after so long?
Oh my god, I missed it. I missed it so much. Nervous.
I'm nervous. My heart was pounding all day. As soon as we started, I felt okay. But
yeah, I definitely feel like it was one of those things where, like, once you get back into the seat and get going, like, everything kind of just clicked into place. At least for me, it did.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was feeling like a little like, man, I've been out of this character for a minute, but then I forgot that Mars lives in a part of my brain, so it really just came out as soon as we started recording. So,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the setup that Jonas does always just like clicks me back into that character. Like,
correct.
Honestly, Jonas, your descriptions of everything really help bring me personally, and I'm sure everybody else, into the world of Seattle and into, you know, Midnight Gravity, and that is incredible as like actors to get into character.
Thank you. It's not a skill I've always had. I've tried to up my GM descriptive game since we started season 1.
Yeah, it's definitely there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You've done it. You've made it. Absolutely. I mean, seriously, like all of season 1 was just phenomenal, and so looking forward to season 2. Like,
yeah, I've been itching for season 2.
I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to ask you guys, you know, what was it like? What was the feeling of dropping back into these kind of more complex characters than we've had in the past? Because like Power in the Dark was our last long game, but even those characters didn't have the same like history in world and the same just sheer number of relationships with other characters.
No, we were babies.
And like I know for me as Snifford, it was it was definitely took a readjustment every time we took a break, because it's sort of a certain corner of my headspace. But I didn't feel that it never was much of a hurdle, because I was always like, well, I know like 5 people and they're all in the party, so I'm not too worried about readjusting back to that. But for this, it's a whole complex web. What did you guys feel like dropping back in?
Want to go first, Casey?
Sure. I mean, after we finished season 1, because of where we finished with everything, I had written a few things down just to like try and get me back into the specific headspace Matthias was at the end of season 1, because obviously there's some stuff going on with, you know, how he's feeling about the coterie. One member in particular who Matthias has overlooked him several times. Cough, cough. Andrew. Cough,
the
cough.
drama.
Yeah.
The drama.
But I mean, so like, I think that helped a little bit that I could go over what I had written ahead of time. But quite frankly, the stuff that happens in episode 2 of season 2, that kind of shifted some things in general, because we had and maybe this is something we can get more into when we talk about episode 2 a little bit more, but the conversations that we had with you, Jonas, leading up to us recording season 2 and what we were going to see in the door. But I think that's a conversation for when we get into season 2 a little bit more. Or episode 2, rather. Rachel?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I think this is a good time to talk about this. So this is knowledge that only a couple of, I guess, close friends and fans know. But Mars is incredibly developed. Jonas and I put how many hours into the backstory?
I don't want to say.
A lot of hours. We like to say
something.
Longer than the running time of Game of Thrones, but only because, and I'll say, we were both very excited to play Vampire, and I was especially excited about playing Vampire. And yeah, so it was just kind of, we did these one-on-ones. Everyone did one-on-ones, but ours were particularly detailed. So I have a very vivid image of who Mars is and all of her, I guess, different facets. So jumping back into the character, I mean, again, it was kind of just like putting on a comfortable pair of shoes, but going back into the character in a traumatic situation, yeah, that's also like putting on a comfortable pair of shoes.
When has Mars not been in a traumatic situation?
Mars carries the traumatic situation.
She carries the trauma. But seriously, the dream element of that I thought was just so cool. Jonas went around with all of us and talked about what, you know, we would like maybe see in these dreams and stuff like that. And I thought those scenes were just so well crafted. So
before we get too deep into that, though, let's focus a little bit on episode 1 of season 2, because we didn't even touch that. Oh no, we did touch that stuff in episode 1.
That's all that episode 1 was.
That's
true.
All of episode 1
one of the
was
things
just...
that I wanted to get to before we really dove deep
open?
into that was the cold open.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, well, I mean, I was just saying, because I was just answering on like, how it felt to jump into this character.
Yeah, sure.
So to go into that and like that being like the first, like, the first experience of like Mars again was just really cool. One of my favorite scenes from season 1 was her embrace, and it just it actually very much reflected some of the embrace if you pay attention to the descriptions between
Rachel,
both scenes.
Yeah, I didn't catch it, but Rachel took my description from the cold open in episode 4 and flipped it around for her dream scene, and I love that shit.
Yes. So it was cool. It was really cool. I loved it. It was comfortable for me.
In general, I was nervous as well because with my home game, I've experienced this, and with RPGs a little bit less, but still every now and then, if you take a break, especially a long break like we did, because we took about 2 months off between the end of Hell Knight and season 2, the energy goes crazy and everyone comes back feeling very punchy, and it's hard to kind of keep a lid on anything. And especially coming off of Hell Knight, which was just absurdity all the way through, I was nervous of starting with these like heavy emotional scenes that are, like, hey, here's your character's worst nightmares happening to you.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. And there certainly there were some asides, but I think everyone did a really good job of keeping a lid on it, keeping it scary, keeping it feeling real. And everyone.
yeah.
The I also really enjoyed in general just the added narration and description everyone brought to it, because that just made me feel like everyone cared. Like it wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh, we're jumping back to season 2 and Jonas is dragging everyone along. It was like, oh no, okay, everyone's in it. Everyone's
No, we're all
No.
in it.
No,
I didn't think no one cared, but just like in terms of readjusting to the energy and
Yeah,
like
sure.
getting back into it, I was like, okay, everyone is on the same page, and I love it.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that cold open.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
cold
so
open
I
though.
mean, this is kind of a little bit more directed at Rachel and me, but like, how did it feel to jump into the roles of the Primogen to start off? Because we didn't even start off with our own characters. We started off with other characters.
Yeah.
So
how did I
wanna,
feel
yeah.
getting to play Lou Grant?
Not
I
really
loved
shocked
it.
by
Mommy Grand.
The Mommy Grand. Oh my gosh. When we talked about that, and Jonas goes, be Lou Grand, I said, yes, please. In fact, I may have screamed excitedly, yes, please. No, I mean, first of all, that character is so powerful. Also a canon character.
Yeah.
Right, Jonas?
We
Yeah.
might get sued. Crazy.
What do you mean? It's Lou Grand with an E. What are you talking about?
Lou Grande.
Lou Grande.
Lou Grande.
It's okay. The Bloodlines game isn't coming out for another 6 months, so we have time.
We have time. We have time. Yeah. But yeah, so to kind of step into those shoes, I just thought it was so fun. Jonas has done a really good job of creating her energy in season 1. So being able to put that on, I just loved it. I mean, for me, it was like an acting challenge. And it was fun. I loved it. What about you, Casey?
I mean, I was playing Goga, who we have not really
The only one we
seen
never met.
at all. Yeah. So it was interesting to go into it with like no real reference except for the notes that Jonas had given us ahead of time. Because basically Jonas gave us a list of like what they're looking to get out of this Elysium, like what they're trying to find out and everything like that. And so, like, I had that as reference, but I'd never seen the character before. I'd never heard the character before. So it was fun to kind of get to create that a little bit. I definitely was a little bit nervous going into it because it's like, well, I don't really have that frame of reference. I didn't want to give too much away necessarily from, like, the things that were in my notes. And plus, like, Goga is a much more secretive character.
Yeah.
Like he keeps a lot to the chest, I feel, partially because of the clan, but partially because of, that's just who he seems to be. So I am glad that like I got to participate in that conversation a little bit, regardless of like not really wanting to give anything away.
Part of the reason he hadn't shown up yet is because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with him.
Sure.
So giving him to you, Casey, because when I was planning this, I was like, yeah, Casey can do the like stern, cold scientist voice. That'll sound good with Casey.
I thought you were going to give me Granch. I honestly thought I was getting Granch.
I did consider that because I originally I was thinking about like how do I make like 1-to-1s for the characters, but and there's still like Thin Blood Tremere have a little bit there, but part of the reason that I did it this way was so that you could give me something to work with when he does show up again.
Sure.
I really enjoyed everyone. We talked about like, do we want to do a little scripted scene like we've done in the past for certain cold opens, like in Delta Green, or do we want to do improv? And everyone said they were cool with improv, which was my preferred option. And I was impressed by how everyone took, because other than Olga, none of those characters have shown up for more than like an episode or 2.
Yeah.
So I was again impressed that everyone did a good job at capturing how they
will say
played.
Though, we did get a bit more of Granch when he saved Christmas in the bonus content on the website. If you haven't gotten a chance to read that, we get a little bit more of Granch from that,
which Andrew did read. So
there you go. I've read it as well.
That context, but and everyone did a good job of kind of bringing out enough of the character with not a lot of time. There were some things in the notes that didn't come out, and that's okay because I particularly, it was sort of like setting up a game of werewolf where I gave everyone 2 or 3 angles to work with and was just like, if it's okay if not all of them come out as long as everyone gets something, and everyone got something. So it worked out perfectly, and I was really pleased because my thought was like, if it goes poorly, then we'll just I will write a script and next week we'll just do that. But I didn't have to. It worked.
Well, just out of curiosity as well, what was your thought process behind having all of us grab a Primogen and do it out? Was it just like too much? You felt like it would be too much of you? Did you want like what was the thought process behind that?
It was mostly just that, like, okay, so it was. I like to think of the cold opens. And this is very pretentious of me, but sort of the way that I kind of structure each episode is in the style of prestige TV. And that's why I've been okay with like a lot of different cold opens, a lot of different side characters and characters we never even met, because it just kind of, to me, just helps build out the world and what's going on.
Yeah.
And I just, in that sense, and in some actual plays I've seen, but just like, in that sort of sense, starting a new season always comes with some kind of shakeup. And there definitely was like, yeah, if I had done that scene as a regular cold open and done just myself, I would have cut it to 2 characters.
Yeah,
just,
yeah, sure.
And that wouldn't be as fun because you wouldn't get all the perspectives. And I also wanted to portray the like, there was a level of duality to it where the coterie goes through the door, and now there's the players, normal characters on one side of reality and everyone else on the other side. And I wanted to emphasize that by being like, we're still seeing this part of the show, so that still comes through familiar voices, and that gives those voices more color and character compared to if I had just done it in it, if I'm just sitting here being like, and this is what the characters think is one thing, but like playing it out makes it feel more of a natural, organic dialogue.
Yeah.
And on top of that as well, and a last part of it was just like the aesthetic of going in from, you guys haven't heard it yet because the edit isn't done, but the intro to the first episode is a bunch of the recap lines from the first season, culminating with that chorus of Vampires Don't Dream. And it just keeping that natural and organic, going from that chorus into still having everyone in the scene chatting and talking to each other to replicate that feeling of the big Elysium was a like third most important point, but a point on the list.
Cool.
I wanted to say, you mentioned how setting that up was like a game of werewolf and how I felt like a werewolf in that scene. I kind of wanted to ask you, Casey, because again, I don't remember how much context you had as Goga, but pointedly in this world, there is a thing with Lugrand as the Toreador Prince and how she pushed the
that was in my notes.
Yeah. So I was curious how you felt about the what's the word, care that she kind of put towards Goga at one point in this scene, just kind of like the like, oh yeah, like it will work out, it will be okay. Like I was pointedly
he
kind.
was entirely not believing that whatsoever.
Why would you say that?
Because Luke Grant is just full of flowery words and nothing else.
Yeah, I on that note, actually, I'll say this is getting into episode 2 a little bit, but part of that was also like the outcome was something that I had to push everyone to without telling them what was going to happen, because otherwise we might as well script it. So that's what it was like. That was like the balance of werewolf is like, well, I need everyone to have these angles, and I need Lugrand to like push in a little bit and have a little something for everyone. But I took it to heart the way that everyone performed their characters, and I did change sort of how things went based on the performances that were given. Originally, Vivian might have voted for herself, and everyone else might have voted for Lou if things had gone that way. But the way it was kind of played, where Goga didn't really bite anything from anyone, I was like, okay, maybe Goga just...
I mean, to be fair, my note said, you don't like Lou and everybody else is weak. So
Yeah. Well, it said, support whoever will keep you in power. And,
right.
You kind of took it back and you didn't bite any of the nuggets we're given, which was a wonderful choice. And I like that as like, okay, he doesn't see this as a real grab. He's just like, whatever, I'm just going to keep doing my thing.
Yeah.
And this thing that's happening right now, this politicking, this is not important to me. I have more important things to care about.
That's kind of how it felt to me playing it as well, I would say.
And that's why when you guys heard from Vivian what had happened, Goga had abstained rather than voted for himself or voted for Lou or Vivian or anyone. He just was like, screw you guys. I don't care. That
choices
was
matter.
Different than my original plan.
Very cool. Very cool.
I mean, moving on from the cold open, I guess, let's talk a little bit more about these dreams. Obviously, Rachel and I are the only two here this week. Maybe we'll get a little bit more from the others in weeks to come on their particular dreams. But, I mean, I kind of want to talk a little bit about why these are the fears that kind of cropped up for our characters. Like why this,
Yeah, for sure. I'll say this before we get into it. I worked with everyone and be like, what is the dream? How could it turn into a nightmare? And what are you searching for in this space? And of everyone, the only person who gave me free reign was Andrew. Andrew was just like, we're Christmas shopping at Pike Place. And I was like, okay, do you have any idea? And he was like, you know what? Whatever you give me, we'll work with it.
Whatever nightmare you make for me.
Yeah. So that was largely like, I knew it was going to be something about Thea, but it was much of that scene was just kind of improv in the moment. Just like, well, how does this go? And how does this go? We'll get to that later. Anyway, but you guys, how does it feel? The nightmare side of things. Why are those the deep-hearted fears that you guys have?
We could start with me because I think it's kind of obvious.
Sure.
Well, Mars is traumatized by Elliot, obviously, and everything that she's ever known or had in her own life has been possessed by Elliot in one way or another, or dominated by Elliot in one way or another. So to see her daughter also possessed and dominated by Elliot in every way, that is her absolute nightmare, especially being that she doesn't know where Nancy is, and to have the sense that she is with him in a sense, if that's where she is, that is probably her worst fear. And when it came down to the choice of going towards her or going away, this is something that I told Jonas afterwards. I was like, I kind of in this dream space wanted Mars to be actually slightly more clear-headed, because how she I guess interacts with her mind in the real world. She kind of has this fractured mind. She's a victim of her own memories, and they are kind of fragments of her past that she can hold on to. So in a dream space, I felt like having just like a little bit more control, or just awareness that she can have the power in that situation, would just be really telling, because then when she gets into the real world, she won't have that control anymore.
Yeah,
I really liked the choice going from the end of season 1, where Mars is full on hallucinating her husband and screaming and crying and throwing up, and then going into the dream being like, I got this.
Exactly.
I really thought you were going to go for Nancy.
I was this
close.
You were too. It was this close. It was very much edited out, but there was a long pause before I said anything. It felt like eternity for me. In that moment, I really didn't know what I wanted, and I was just like, no, she that was in that moment where I was like, she has more control here, being that she has experience with the, fractured floating remnants of her mind in the real world. So yeah, it really came down to that.
How about you, Matthias?
I mean, for me, the whole dream started off with what Matthias was promised in his embrace, a show that would go on forever. Which is why he started out looking the way he did, with Georgia still by his side, regardless of how long it had been. Whether that means she was embraced or not, who knows? And then turning into the ultimate nightmare for Matthias, especially where he was at headspace wise, going into the door, still not feeling as if he belonged anywhere, and simultaneously being looked at as a monster of a Nosferatu, losing all of that, like that fandom, or I guess a sense of people liking him, enjoying his show, like all just kind of melting away like his skin, basically. And then attacking the one person who he cares about most and killing her, which was in his embrace, was his first question to Vivi after he kind of snapped out of it, was, is Georgia okay?
Yeah.
So again, kind of worst nightmare scenario. But I think the biggest thing was him just being left alone. And I guess, I mean, it didn't really come across in the dream, but possibly end up being hunted as well. And not being able to even show his face is kind of the nightmare. And then when it came to like the decision at the end, right? When Jonas and I had talked about it ahead of time, like the decision was, well, does he want power or control? That's what he wants going in. Power and control over everything that's going on, because that's the one thing he felt like he has not had this entire time, is any power or any control over anything that has happened to him. But I think the decision was made very easily for him based off of the nightmare switch there, because he had just killed the person he cared most for, and then the vines came in offering that power and control. And if the power of vampirism is this, then that is not something that he wanted.
Maybe those vines could have brought her back. We'll never know.
We'll never know. I mean, I wouldn't have even thought of that, but all right. Well, shit.
I think that goes into a segue that I wanted to talk about a little, because I don't know if I wanted to know, I guess, without tooting my own horn too much, how much this came through, because one thing that I wanted to emphasize throughout all the dream scenes, and starting with the narration leading into it, was the specific dreamlike quality of it. Because it I don't want to say it bothers me, but I notice in a lot of fantasy media and of various kinds that dreams don't feel very dreamy. They're way too cogent and lucid in most cases. Like, you get a vision from a god. Of course, they can shape it to be whatever they want, but I wanted to be very clear that these were real dreams that don't make a lot of sense. And starting with the intro, like there was a lot of repeated language and short phrases that repeated in different ways to kind of mirror the original season 1 intro, but in a this new abstract sense. Weird descriptions that don't make a lot of sense. I used the term fiddle black, which is something just like real world forbidden knowledge in a poetry class I was in once. I wrote that line, the fiddle black void, talking about the night sky. And I was like, that's a cool line. And then I went to the class and we shared our readings, and everyone in the class was like, Jonas, what the fuck does fiddle black mean? Fiddles are not known for. And I genuinely was so stunned. I was like, I don't know. It made sense at the time. And that's kind of like a catchphrase for me now, talking about weirdness and those repeated phrases and stuff. And then I brought some of those into the dream scenarios as well, that some of the language, the kaleidoscope and the synesthesia and all those followed you guys into those dreams, and the spacing of the dreams as well. Like the flow of action was not 100% clear. Like for example, for you, Matthias, you turn into a monster and run off stage and kill Georgia, but then suddenly you're back on stage with her dead body. And something similar for Sky with Reggie and Antonio especially. Mars was probably the most spatially sensible, but there was still like a loss of like the faces turning away from you and everyone changing.
Mhm.
So, again, I don't want to be too minor harm, but just like, how did you guys feel with respect to narrating and role playing in a space that doesn't exist? Like, none of it exists, but more like usually there's like a shared imagination thing with a concrete background, and this was a lot more fluid and open. And how did that feel and come across?
I will say for me personally, like the dreamy aspect of that stuff to me came across more with Reggie and Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because when I was in it, I was not thinking about it as much. When I was like doing my own scene, I was not thinking about, the surroundings or anything like that. I was thinking about the character and thinking about like the emotion that he was going through more so than I was like the weird stuff that's kind of going on around him. And I think that's kind of what it's like when you are the person dreaming as well. You don't notice the weird stuff until you start trying to explain it to somebody when you're awake.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. That's great.
For mine, again, you said it kind of like, it's true. It kind of had the most like spatial consistency and I guess structure, plot of physicality. Like it kind of had a direct narrative. But when it did get dreamy, when the audience turned into faces and we had that whole horror scene happening, I think I don't know how to describe this, but for me as a TTRPG player and perhaps as an actor, and maybe just as a person, perhaps I'm just very suggestible. But like when something is described to me, like I just can physically like see it and sense it, and I just kind of go with the flow. I also am privileged in this narrative to have a bunch of extra mind-shattering images across Mars history, as her mind has slowly broken down over the years. So the expressions of the scene kind of becoming weird and not grounded was honestly just more grounding to me as a role player. I was just very in the scene and very just, aware of my own sensibilities. So the weirdness was there, sure, but I was very, is comfortable a good word? Yeah. Maybe not for that scene exactly, but I don't know. I'm just very sensory, like adept to that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I was just there. I just go. I'm in the scene. Something's being explained to Rachel. She's there. Just beautiful. I don't know. It's just like a great marriage of role player and narrator. It just happens with me, I guess.
Let's jump over to season 2, episode 2.
Ooh.
What are thoughts on Lou taking the Prinstone?
What? That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can I give my thoughts?
I mean, you can absolutely give your thoughts. I want to give my thoughts and Matthias's thoughts because they're two different things.
I guess I'll say briefly that one thing about Vampire that I like as a game system and a world that I find cool and interesting is that like the quote unquote politics are not structural. It's all just like at most 40 people in a room fighting over who gets to be in charge. It's not like in a D&D game, you're not going to go up and change the king of the country by doing a little machinations, trading some favors and stuff like that. It's a whole system. But in Vampire, the high level stuff can very easily get personal. and I wanted you guys to, I want to do like the political things in general were something I wanted to, I said this would be brief, it's not. I wanted to ensure that we got that aspect of the game. If we're playing Vampire, I want to do the politics, but I
took skills that are politic related, and they haven't come up yet.
I mean, you just gotta get into more legal debates, I guess. But
most of it's etiquette, so
I wanted to make sure that we handle those aspects because I feel it's a big part of Vampire, especially a Camarilla game. And one thing I want to do is like, I knew I'm going to start with the dead prince. I knew there's going to be a new prince at one point. I don't really want to set up a thing where one of the players becomes prince.
That would be crazy.
Although
Reggie.
If any, and it's an RPG, anything could happen. If you guys made moves to make that happen, sure. But like, I didn't want to just give that road to anyone. But I was like,
Midnight Gravity and the Thin Blood Prince.
Thin Blood Prince. I wanted to make sure that no matter what, the players were making choices that would affect the political landscape of the game. So that's why in season 1, there was the whole thing of like, who are you planning to hang out with? Who are you going to give the Oculus to? Whatever that means. No one knew what it meant. And then the implication was that person would become prince. And I struggled for a while. I was like, well, also, I kind of want Lou Grant to take over again for various other reasons. And I didn't want to just throw away the work you guys did, but I wanted to emphasize something in wrong. That was another reason to do the cold open, was to be like, you get a glimpse that, oh, okay, Vivian did make her case, but Lou Grant just has more weight to throw around.
I mean, my question then becomes like, what does it even mean at this point? Like what we did with the door and who we pledged it to, right? Because we still don't have any implication as to what that power even is that we supposedly pledged to Vivi.
That's true.
That she might not even be able to use. We still have no idea as to what that even means. So like, I can understand them being like, well, we still don't know what that is.
I mean,
you are holding a weapon that might not be loaded.
And Lou Grant also had somebody in the door anyway. So it was like, the weight of it, is still divided.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with that too, though, is like, how much can we even like say we pledged it, right? Like, there's no real ownership of it. It doesn't seem like yes, the door is interested in all of us, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
You did get keys.
That's true. We have keys, and as far as I know, Chaz doesn't have a key.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure, but I will say that was a thing I struggled with as well. I mean, even in season 1, like the whole thing about who are you going to promise it to, I was like, I don't know what that actually means either. Really, but I mean, it's all in the cards. You got to tune in to find out what that means.
Sandman presented the keys, so
yeah. How much do we trust that?
He's fine. He's so nice. He's so helpful.
He's a creep.
He promised, listen, he said if you helped him out with this, you would have his allegiance. So you just, whatever you need, they'll be there.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Matthias, like having access to stuff from the door is probably going to be a little bit of a game changer for the Thin Bloods. We'll see. But, I mean, dude's still a creep. I still find that whole conversation in season 1 funny, but regardless, Rachel, what
so did not go the way I wanted.
We are getting a little off topic on Lou having the princedom.
Yeah,
so Rachel,
yeah.
What is your thoughts on that, and what's Mars's thoughts on that? Because those could be two different things.
They are definitely two different things because Rachel has other awareness. We'll start with Mars, I guess. Mars is terrified because Lou Grant has connections to Elliot.
Yep.
And again, it's like, yeah, just give the power more power,
Rich get richer.
The rich get richer. It's just it really is. It kind of just is a very basic idea. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like Elliot having more power. Even if it's indirect, it's still connected, and everything is a social game like that, so it's might as well just be his. And she is kind of at this point it's just a victim of circumstance, like we all are. Like, what can you do? It's just act now. It's like, well, this is a situation and I'm just going to react to it accordingly. I honestly don't think she's had enough time to really process what that means, other than oh shit. Rachel, on the other hand, is thrilled. I love my villains being towering and impossible to deal with. So I am excited, and I couldn't have seen this going better for my excitement of what's going to happen. Yeah. Kind of simple there, but yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my personal, like, as a player idea of this is like, it did logically seem to make the most sense, especially after that conversation, right? Because it didn't seem like anyone else was really making an honest go for it. Olga didn't really seem like she was like, oh, well, if we're gonna vote for me. Like, there didn't seem to be any strong feeling that that's what she wanted. And maybe I don't necessarily know why I didn't have her notes in front of me, but perhaps Sky or Jonas could lend us a little explanation on that. But
yeah, it basically, again, I mean, I wanted to subtly push everyone that it seemed like Lou was the natural choice. So, but it did say in Sky's notes, I believe, you want to be Prince, and if you can't get that, make sure Vivian doesn't.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was like even more so than Lou becoming Prince out of that conversation. What I wanted to, the even more like obvious or relevant info is nobody likes Vivian. This is canon to the games that Malkavians in Seattle are not popular, have never been popular. They've always been kind of an underclass clan, and Vivian to the players is like the most reasonable, helpful person in the leadership, but to everyone else, she is a weirdo psychic upstart that is snooping in all their shit and can see the future, and they don't like that.
Yep.
This is incredibly invasive. I mean, as the person who played Lou Grant too, like, I mean, she has a lot of chess pieces in place, like,
I would say too many.
Excessively. I mean, who's to say she hasn't been plotting this since she was deposed?
Oh, I'm absolutely certain she has.
Exactly. She has been plotting this since she's been deposed.
To Olga's perspective as well, specifically, my logic there is, Olga's in a weird place because there's not that many Lasombra in the city, and the oldest one is in Lou's court. So she, once Lou comes out and says, oh, I've got Chaz working for me, Olga kind of has to be like, yeah, I'm cool with that, or else she loses a lot of face as Primogen as well.
Yeah, that's fair. But for Matthias, it's an interesting situation because she is the one who spared him initially.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, she was Prince for the majority of his tenure being a kindred. And, he got blamed for a lot of stuff. And he got a lot of dirty tasks. And not having a prince kind of was a nice reprieve from that.
Sure.
And I think he's probably afraid that things are going to go back to that, which is kind of terrifying, especially now that things are moving in Thin Blood circles that he wants to be a part of. But, very well he could get the leash yanked back on him, and we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, okay, that's yay.
Well, that's also another reason.
Thin Buds.
I don't want to go too far into the rest of what I have planned, but like starting the season with everyone thinks you're dead, and we're going to keep it that way for a bit is also a way to like for me as GM to kind of regulate how quickly you guys reintegrate and how fast everyone comes and tries to fucking like kill you or get you on their side or whatever. And I hope this first arc will be about like slowly kind of picking up the pieces and making plans for a reemergence.
Oh, I'm sure this is another point that you have, Casey, but we're now dealing with the Second Inquisition.
Yep.
Hunters
That
in
is
town.
on my list.
Hunters.
I kind of want to. My whole thing with that was like, what are your characters' thoughts on having hunters in the city? What does that mean to you? Like, is it going to change how you go about daily business even after people find out that we're still alive?
So this is interesting and revealing of Mars's past, because she's dealt with shit. She's been around history, but she doesn't really have a history with hunters. They've been kind of like, when the band was touring, they were kind of like, they were always under Elliot's thumb. They wouldn't really get too far out of line, and they wouldn't really end up in too many situations that really involved other parties. So this being the first time that an event is occurring with one of these other parties, and she and her band don't have that kind of what you call it, that kind of protection. Another thing that I don't think that she's processed. She's concerned about her band, and hearing that they are okay is good, but there's still just a lot to process. There's a lot kind of going on. And if she thinks fast, bad things happen. So easier to take things slow for the minute, maybe until episode 3 when all of this lands. Yeah. What about Matthias?
Directly, I don't think Matthias has really dealt with hunters other than his own kind.
Yeah, Seattle's been a Camarilla stronghold for most of the last century. Yeah. It's been pretty safe on that regard. So you and Antonio actually, despite being the older members of the coterie, you have the least kind of experience with this.
Yeah.
Well, Reggie, obviously, but like still, even among the city, like because you were in Seattle for all that time.
Yep. That being said, I mean, Matthias as a thin blood, and also with some other peculiarities about him, is kind of the best set to deal with this situation, personally. He is a little bit harder to detect than the rest of the coterie, which...
That's true. That's very true.
I think what I am most nervous about as both a player and as Matthias is how the whole sugar situation is going to continue with, hunters in the city and the Second Inquisition in the city. Like what that is going to mean. Yeah,
Teddy's plan is coming up faster than he may have imagined.
Faster, yeah, absolutely. So who knows? I mean, Matthias was never fully on board with the sugar situation, partially because it would also affect the kindred of his coterie and himself. Like he can't really partake in sugar either, because of his beast and everything, which is not a thing that most Thinbloods have. So
I was so excited for that reveal.
that sugar would not work for me. Yeah,
because it was in my original plans was that it's empowers thin bloods, but weakens or drives full-blooded kindred crazy. And then because you didn't have that flaw, you had a different flaw. And when we were talking about your stuff with Matthias, I was like, it seems like you're interested in having the capability of frenzying. Do you want to swap out a flaw for that? And then only later, when you guys first encountered the sugar, I was like, oh wait.
That's not good.
That means Matthias is in it with what I was worried about is it would make too hard of a divide for the coterie if Matthias is in on this sugar stuff and everyone else can't be. But then it was like, oh no, Matthias also can't be. So he's stuck with them.
Yeah, I mean, I will also say, like, this is the perfect time for Thin Bloods to make any semblance of a move, I think.
Mhm.
So I'm very excited for Matthias's next interaction with Teddy and with Cassandra, because I'm not gonna lie, after that dream sequence, I started writing something up, and I'm very excited to address Thin Bloods a little bit more throughout this season.
Jonas, for you,
Hi, what's up?
how, like, I guess, how excited are you to play with the Second Inquisition in this season?
Oh,
Like,
jeez.
to have those elements in the story.
I so in my Sunday night vampire game that inspired me to do any of this in the first place, and which just ended, our last big arc was dealing with Second Inquisition in Chicago, and so I've got some of that energy kind of pouring off, I guess. And I think in the meta plot of V5, some long-term fans are annoyed at how powerful the Second Inquisition is. That it seems like they're kind of the writer's favorite pets, but I sort of see them as being a fun, fallible antagonist, where they have power and they have technology and resources that Kindred can never access, but they also can't operate. They also have to protect the Masquerade, and they have to answer to, they have to disguise their operations and answer to government officials. And it's the sort of kind of narrative force that to me feels like a natural extension of events in the world, which is good world building and my favorite kind of thing to play with, where like it's one thing to have, oh, there's a secret society of vampires, and every now and then a Joe Schmo figures it out and goes hunting them. Like, sure, that probably happens. But to have this clandestine, cell-based, decentralized, no one really knows what's going on, but they're all kind of chatting to each other as best they can. It feels human, and it feels like a natural response to what's going on. So I'm excited as well, because in Kindred, in season 1, a lot of our antagonists, I mean, all of our antagonists basically were Kindred, and that offers certain benefits and certain cons narratively. And I'm excited to give you guys more mortal foes who you can deal with in different ways, in more ways mostly, but who also have their own unique challenges to solve and face. Not even just in terms of like a combat, but like what they do in the city and who they talk to and how they get around. Like those are all different from Kindred.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for that, honestly. Like, God, I love this game so much.
I mean, I will definitely say that the Second Inquisition coming was not something that I was anticipating for season 2. I'm super excited about it.
We got some probes. We got some fingers in the pie,
Yeah, I mean,
might be gearing up for something big.
Oh, geez, no.
The other thing is, I don't want to. Another big inspiration for me in Vampire is LA by Night, and I don't want to just rip off LA by Night either, because in the later seasons there is a much larger scale Second Inquisition conflict, and that's so I don't want to just completely steal from my inspirations either. So we'll see where it goes.
I'm excited. I'm so excited.
I wanted to briefly give a little shout out to Rachel for helping me structure the start of this season, because there were some issues I was having with how to order certain events and how to kick things off and the timing of stuff. And it was actually Rachel's idea to have Vivian meet you as soon as you come out the door, having had visions of that. I was like, that's such a fucking cool idea. I love that.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
That's all Rachel. I loved that part so much, of her just like, everyone's scattered to the winds. No one knows where they are, but Vivian's right there. She's like, finally. Every week I would have
liked to go where I wanted to go after my vision, but that's fine. We'll get there eventually.
When does Matthias ever get what he wants? I also wanted to ask briefly about...
I want Matthias to go there.
We'll find out.
I want to ask what everyone... you've been told that there was some kind of mass sleep event in Seattle, and some people may have died because of that. How's we got a little bit of it in the episode, but sort of as players, what do you think of that sort of mass casualty that you're kind of maybe personally responsible for?
Wow, put it that way.
I said kind of maybe.
Kind of maybe. Yeah. Partially. We did something that caused it. I mean, I thought that was just a cool like repercussion for what happened. I mean, just what a cool concept that's what, you know, puts mortals to sleep, causing this like newsworthy event. Like that's massive. That sucks. That's fantastic. Like it's all of those things at once. I you know, people died from it. You know, in character, obviously Mars is very concerned that David may have died from it. Yeah, I mean, it's just I thought it was perfect. I can't, my words are not coming to me as well as I want them to right now. I really just thought that was such a cool idea.
I mean, I love the concept of it, and I love that, again, there's consequences for what we did. I think Matthias, as upset as he probably is that a lot of people died, is thinking, well, there was no way to know that was what was going to happen, and it's not sitting on his conscience the way it is Reggie's, where it's like, oh, this was directly our fault.
Yeah,
it's like,
I noted that, and to my perspective, like I didn't want it to be a gotcha that like, oh, you guys killed a couple hundred people.
Well,
like
especially with how much research we did on the door. Like if there was any indication of that, like that could have happened. And like, then there was a moral quandary of whether we should enter or not, then sure. But we had no way of knowing.
Yeah. It was never meant to be a gotcha, but still just to show that like, you know, and like Sandman said, he had no idea what would happen when you guys went in. And it's part of the beauty of the World of Darkness to me as well is that it's there's so much lore, there's so many characters, factions, and types of supernatural creature, but it still feels to me that there is a lot of mystery as well. And like, you know, the door and all that stuff, the dreaming is canon, but the door and everything around that is my own invention. And I feel empowered by the setting to create those kinds of mysteries and explore them. And sometimes people die.
Sometimes people die.
Sometimes people die.
Any other last minute?
I think just the last thing that I had was like, what are we excited for in season 2? Like, what are we expecting? What are we excited for? I mean, there's obviously a lot. We've talked at length about it outside of the podcast of like, you know, what we expect to Jonas and what we would like to see. But I mean, let's throw it out here for the Patreon.
Give me my daughter, Jonas. Give me my daughter.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm excited.
Give me my daughter. Give me my husband. Give me my niece.
We're recording this ahead of the first episode with Goat as our guest.
Yeah.
And,
so excited.
We did our one-on-one this week, and she's very much she got into it right away. She's very in character and gets the game and the setting in an important, deep way that I really am looking forward to. I'm looking forward to pulling a little bit more out of Matthias and Antonio, who we didn't get as much of in the first season. Obviously, Mars is going to have a lot of stuff going on.
Family.
We might finally learn what there are 3 of them means. We might not. I'm not sure yet.
We kind of know. We know something.
There are 3 of them.
You know one part of it, and
it's an onion. There's 3 layers.
I'm excited for more character stuff, just in general, because I wanted this season to be more character driven.
Can I have my family, Jonas?
No.
Oh, okay.
I will answer Jonas.
You gotta work for it. Okay, Donald Duck. What about you, Daisy?
I mean, I'm super excited. Like, I'm very excited to have Goat on the show, but I know, like, with everything that has been going on with Matthias, I'm very excited for like the Thin Blood stuff to like really start coming to the surface a little bit more. Knowing the Inquisition, he's here now too. It has like this huge implication as to big changes that are going to come to Seattle, which is also exciting. I want to know how like Lou handles that as Prince as well, seeing how she gets Prince and then something instantly goes wrong. I want to see what the political aspect of that is. But yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm excited for is I want Matthias to talk to the Thin Bloods like as a group and like actually, because as of right now, his only real connection has been through Teddy, and Teddy is relaying whatever, if he's even relaying anything. But I want Matthias to get a stage. I'm excited for him to have a stage.
Me too. I want Matthias to have a stage.
I'll tell you what I'm not excited for is introducing another 30 characters for everyone to keep track of. But
another 30 Thin Bloods?
My
Just 30?
touchstones? My
no,
touchstones?
there's only a few Thin Bloods, but yeah, I wanted to try and tighten season 2 a little bit and reuse more characters, but with what everyone told me they were interested in, I was like, I guess we're just doubling the cast. That's cool.
Woo!
I mean, I'll just do my best to keep them distinct and meaningful as much as I can do. There's a lot of important people that we also just haven't met yet. Like,
I'm sure.
Like not even stuff that is a result of what people are interested in, but just things that like I specifically left out of season 1 to not overload it, and they got to come in sometime.
I want to know what the name of the guy running the Second Inquisition in Seattle is.
That's a good question. Maybe we'll find out this arc. Or get some pointers at least.
If it's not Steve DeWinky, I'm not interested.
What if it's Oink the Whole McSploink?
Oh, if it's Oink McSploink. Well, Oink McSploink is canonically a kindred.
He's a Brujah, yeah, but maybe he turned traitor.
Oh, God. If Oink McSploink, we're all done if Oink McSploink turned traitor, okay?
That's game over.
We'll never survive. We can't handle that Brujah.
As a last note, I just want to give a quick shout out to a friend of the show, Chris Dane, who sort of by proxy appears as Arvoidus in season 1, and who did predict. I got predictions from many of our listeners who talk to us frequently, and Chris predicted that the Oculus was a big dream catcher for the world that only affected vampires and prevented them from dreaming. Which, although it's not exactly the right way around, but it was so close that I was like, when he said that on the call we were in, I was like, man, it's a good thing we're not on video because I am beaming with
close.
how good that was.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
So shout out to Chris. We got there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody on Patreon, for joining us here at the first ever Jesters Recap.
Woo!
We are hoping to do this bi-weekly. Every other episode, basically, we'll be having a recap about the last 2. So be sure to jump onto your Patreon accounts, give this episode a download, give us a good old like, and thank you so much for supporting us. We all really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we don't need plugs because we're plugging you. Our lovely patrons.
Aww.
That's
we'll get the plug. You're right. We need that's the highest tier. Get plugged by the plug master.
We will come to your house and plug you.
I don't think we want to come to their house. That's a lot.
We'll send a plug.
We'll send a plug in the mail.
For self-plugging purposes.
Okay.
All right, Donald.
Oh, sorry. I think the line's breaking up. I'm getting stabbed.
Oh, my child. Sorry.
Is that your Tamagotchi?
Yeah.
Wait, really?
Do you actually have a Tamagotchi?
Yes.
Incredible.
I'm glad that went on video.
Thing in the chat was about, Rachel? Because I was also trying to figure out what the fuck you were talking about.
Are we gonna we're gonna talk about
Might
I have
as
a
well.
child. Okay, we have a side vampire game. And sorry, I had to turn its lights off because it was going to bed. Basically, there's a character that had a Tamagotchi. So my character Zara took care of the Tamagotchi, which is owned by a current antagonist, and as a gift, my friend Caitlin sent me in real life a Tamagotchi.
Gotcha.
And yes, that is my baby that
Importantly, during
want
the
you
session,
to send a gender reveal
That's
gift.
really funny.
During the session, Rachel
chat.
downloaded a Tamagotchi app on her phone and took care of it until giving the thing back to the character in game.
Full hunger, full fun.
Which if she hadn't, would have created a situation.
Oh boy.
Go 100% in your games. Develop your characters for a longer running time than Game of Thrones. Take care of your Tamagotchi
no.
in real
do
life.
what you want to do. Don't
Live
listen to her.
the
Play your
life of
game
the
how you want to play it.
character.
Jesus Christ.
Escapism is your best friend.
Escapism is some people's best friend. Don't be
Escapism-
telling people how to play their games, all right? We're not
Disappear
elitists
into the
here.
void of TTRPGs. Listen to more RP Jesters and give us a 5-star review. Thanks. Is that how we end this thing?
No,
don't
they're
know.
already
We don't-
paying for this.
Yeah.
What? They can't give us a 5-star review too?
They probably already have if they're
That's
paying
what I'm
for
saying.
I would
That's
hope
the
so.
joke. Could you imagine?
it. Thank you for explaining the joke. Yummy,
Oh, yummy, yummy.
I'm the joke goblin.
Wait, that was a joke?
You
I was
just said
serious.
it was.
You
You
just
said
said
that
it
was
was
the
a joke.
joke.
Nothing's a joke. Everything is real.
But you just said disappear into the fantasy.
Yeah, that was.
I'm
Yeah,
way
that was a
lost.
joke.
I'm
that
so
was a
lost.
joke. That was a joke. I don't know what's going on.
Good night.
Good night.
Is that?
Is that how we
I don't
end
think
this?
that's how we end this, but
Okay, what
We
do we
could
do?
just say-
Do we do jingle jester bells and we all go?
yeah, let's jingle some jester bells. I'm sure Rachel has her hat.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
almost grabbed my hat
Merry
for this,
Christmas.
but
Merry
Yes.
Jesters.
Merry Jesters.
we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Walk